I found the funk had a distinct cherry color to it, but there were undertones of blue as well.
Zögernd.
The Scottish band Cocteau Twins put out their hugely influential sixth full-length studio album, Heaven or Las Vegas, 30 years ago this week. My good friend Daniel Hales, hello Daniel.
Hello.
He once called this a perfect album. We've been playing and listening to music together for about 10 years, and while we have plenty of overlap between our tastes, I think Heaven or Las Vegas is the one where we're both 100%. So I wanted to have Daniel on and try to unpack everything we love about this record. This is a commentary track, meaning that we're going to listen to the album and talk about it as it unfolds. If you've never listened to Heaven or Las Vegas before, turn us off right now and go listen to the album. If you're already familiar and you're itching to find out what two guys from Western Massachusetts have to say about it, you've come to the right place. Now I'm going to do a countdown and we'll press play at the same time. Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1, play. Well, I think the natural place to start is this is an album all about mood, and this is the establishing shot of the whole album, the whole opus, cherry-colored funk. What kind of a mood does this put you in, Daniel?
It's a sophisticated and sexy mood. But it's established immediately. There's a little bit of swagger, but there's a little bit of that old mystery, but it's upbeat and like you want to be wherever she is.
This song for me, and this doesn't often happen with music, but I will hear people every now and then talking about the kind of like a synesthetic response where I see this music, and this one's kind of unique in that respect. I really picture you've got this descending guitar line, and you've got Elizabeth Fraser's vocal line that's kind of slowly creeping up from one note to the next one higher to the next one higher, and I picture a stream rolling over some rocks, and the kind of optical illusion you get where if you're focusing on one thing, it seems like the water is stationary and the rocks are moving.
That's a great image. I'm totally there.
So the title is Cherry Colored Funk. It's not very funky, but maybe she means funk as in I'm in a funk, I've got the blues. And she just sings blues, Beatles and eggs and blues, or Bills and eggs and blues.
Yeah, I was thinking about the colors of this album, and I think its primary color is cherry, and its secondary color is blue.
Okay. Tell me more about that. Where do those colors show up?
She mentions them in multiple songs, but cherry's mentioned the most. But there's definitely it's an album about joy, so maybe the cherry is joy and the blue is the blues, the sadness of the album. I think I'm also influenced by the cover, obviously, which it's got a cherry and blue thing going on.
See, their artist was paying attention.
One of the things that I love so much about this album, particularly in headphones, is the way she multi-tracks herself and the way she's got the vocal on this side, that's the lead vocal, but then she's got the confiding vocal on the other side that's just whispering in your ear.
Oh, we should talk about the band name itself. One of their peers back when they were starting out in Glasgow was a band called Johnny and the Self-Abusers. And do you know what Johnny and the Self-Abusers later renamed themselves?
Wasn't
Simple
that?
Minds.
Simple Minds. Simple Minds. That's right. That's right.
One of Johnny and the Self-Abusers' songs was the Cocteau Twins. Jim Kerr is the singer from Simple Minds. He was really into Jean Cocteau, who's this sort of Renaissance man. One of his novels is Les Enfants Terribles. All right, now we're on track to Pitch the Baby, which if you look at the very helpful official Cocteau Twins glossary on cocteautwins.com. They'll have a lot of explanatory matter. Pitching the baby is placing frivolous bets to encourage someone who's bluffing in a card game. So this is where we kind of first tie in, I think, with the Las Vegas theme. And of course, looking at this biographically, Elizabeth Fraser and Robin Guthrie had just had a baby while they're recording this. They released the album on Lucy Bell's first birthday. So there's a couple of things going on with the baby in this song and across the record.
Part of what I thought was interesting was where this was recorded.
Yes, tell me the story.
So it is a studio called Eel Pie Studio, owned by Pete Townsend, but for their purposes, they decided to call it September Sound.
And I don't remember what year Pete Townsend bought the place, but the story goes that he had gotten a DUI and lost his driver's license, and Eel Pie happened to be on the banks of the Thames, and so he could drive a boat there and not have to drive a car.
That's fantastic. Yeah, they also had lots of rock star parties there. Simon remembers, quote, a wild old time, a legendary session with Echo and the Bunnymen singer Ian McCullough, who was in regular attendance due to also recording his first solo album, Candleland, at September Sound at the time. We were hanging out with some of the greatest British music hedonists, Pete Wiley, Mal from Cabaret Voltaire, Jim Thirlwell, Shane McGowan. A lot of people came and went.
Huh. Getting back to the mood for a minute, a lot of people have observed that this is a makeout album. A lot of what we get out of music is what we bring into it, the circumstances under which we heard something, or not necessarily the first time hearing it, but the first time appreciating it, internalizing it. And for me, that was definitely at the beginning of a very brief but very intense relationship. And this album is all about this album's on in the corner, the lights are dimmed, gazing into one another's eyes, that type of thing. Where did you first hear this album?
I think when it came out, I might have heard the title track and seen the video before I heard the whole album. But yeah, it's very sensuous music, whether or not it's specifically makeout music or just creating a mood. And this is definitely the album of theirs where it's the mood that is most conducive to romance. I mean, I could see the earlier ones being that too, but this is definitely more sensual and sexy and funky. It's a funky track. It might be the funkiest one on the album.
Certainly funkier than Cherry Colored Funk.
Certainly. But there's some funk in there too. And this Ice Blink Luck also's got some funk to it. Although it's kind of like a Cure sort of funk.
Yeah. And Ice Blink, according to the glossary, is the yellowish glare in the sky above an ice field or a coastal ice cliff.
Cool. I didn't know that.
So this was the first single, came out a month before the album dropped, and it was their first U.S. single. Made it up to number 3 on the Modern Rock Tracks chart, so they got some serious cred in the U.S. with this.
Yeah, I didn't realize that before doing research, because this wasn't on my radar at all. I only heard the second single, and that's when I knew the new album was out.
I don't know if you dove into any of the B-sides. This single had 2 B-sides. Mizake the Mizan, which is maybe my favorite title of this whole bunch, and The Watchler. This song, and there was also a music video for the title track. I don't think I saw them until we started prepping for this podcast, but they're both kind of almost exactly how I pictured a Cocteau Twins performance, like just very, very stationary band members, but lots of motion with lights and kind of, again, establishing a mood. The mood that was suggested by the music, I think, came through in those videos pretty perfectly. So
I just want to note more cherry in this one. It sounds kind of like she says cherry comb, but at other moments I'm like, is it cherry cola?
This is subject to debate, I guess. Everything is subject to debate. But I think what she's actually saying there is Jericho. I'm not sure if this is from Genius Lyrics or if this is one of the sanctioned lyrics that they've actually discussed with various chroniclers, but the 3 or 4 lines that I can remember are, "You're the match of Jericho that will burn this whole madhouse down."
Cool.
She does something really interesting when this comes around for this. So we're in the second refrain. It repeats twice, and on that second repetition, she's adding extra words to the line so that exquisite comes on the downbeat where it didn't before, and everything is staggered a couple of bars.
I think this is one of those songs where baby is one of the big words and obviously one of the big themes. And sometimes she's addressing her baby, her child, and sometimes she's addressing her baby, her man. And I feel like she's talking to both of them in this song.
One of the weird things Elizabeth Fraser does, I think, with the way she sings not only these kind of inscrutable lyrics, but she also emphasizes things in a way that is unusual. She puts the emphasis on the wrong syllable, if you will.
She always felt kind of like a baby learning words and taking pleasure in new sounds and like just trying out all the sounds, you know?
Mm.
And it's like to have that album be about a lot about the baby. It's like she's celebrating the baby also, you know, babbling and
yeah, that's very
has that
cool.
Sort of pre-language quality about her vocals a lot of time that remind me of the way babies just babble and play with the sounds. Also quite funky, fitty, fitty clown.
Yes, I'm gonna go ahead and call it right here. This is my favorite track on the album. I'll get into some of the reasons why later when we have more of a frame of reference to talk about it musically. From the glossary again, a 50-50 clown is a small-town police officer who works the noon to midnight shift.
This could almost be the theme music for a cop show. That sort
walking
of
the
bump,
beat,
bump,
yeah.
bump, bump, bump.
Yeah, I can see the camera close up on the boots grinding through the mud.
It's definitely one of the more mysterious lyrically ones.
Yeah.
It's hard to grab much. Although what I noticed last night is that there are oceans in this song, which haven't come up yet, but a lot of it is really, just syllabics as far as I can tell.
I mentioned Watchler earlier, one of the B-sides. Both 50-50 Clown and Watchler share a little bit of lyrical material, whatever you can make out of it. In 50-50 Clown, there's a line that maybe says something like, "Motions aren't the shape emotions are." Watchler has the line, "Motions aren't emotional," which to me speaks to kind of a interior-exterior separation, kind of a futility of really expressing what you feel inside. One quote of hers I found, "I've got reams and reams of words that I don't have a clue what they mean, but I wanted them because I knew I'd be able to express myself without giving anything away." I think that's really evocative of that line that I was fixating on before, "Motions aren't emotional." Obviously, she wants to express herself. She's in a famous rock band. They're touring the world. Adoring fans are bowing at her feet, but she still has something that she doesn't want to share.
And they were never comfortable in that role. They were the intensely shy people and very private and really had a hard transition to becoming touring musicians and rock stars. I listened a lot, or tried to various times listen to this Cocteau Twins, the Conversation Disc series. That's a compilation of interviews. And she said something similar about her process in that one, where she finds a special word and she saves it. Although I will also say that Scottish is not super easy to understand, and mumbling, shy Scottish people are really, really hard. Like, I need a transcript for most of this.
Part of me was always wondering, is this because of an accent that I'm having trouble understanding what they're saying?
Well, she does say, and Robin also says in the interview, that a lot of the words that she's playing with are specific to Scottish, or words that only Scots would know. And I think this might be my favorite, but it's between this and the last track.
The previous track or the
final track, the final song. Those are my two favorites. I think this has overall been my favorite for the longest. It's just, it got it all. It's got it all, man. And I also noticed listening last night or maybe 2 nights ago, to earlier Cocteaus, the opening riff on Heaven or Las Vegas sounds a lot like a slowed down version of the opening riff in Sugar Hiccup. Check it out.
Okay. I did kind of a breakneck speed listen through a lot of their other works.
You should really, have you listened to Garland's, the first full length?
I have, yeah. Garland's I found to be like what I would think of as gothic rock. It sounded a lot like Disintegration, which came years later.
And like gothic rock, the very beginning of goth rock was very punk. And there's something kind of punk about Garland's.
Yeah.
And that's where the people get off that feel like they sold out, the people that liked it when it was punkier and raw, and that they see this as polished pop music. But it's still got all of the essential ingredients that the early stuff had. It's just they were using it to its full potential.
This has been where all the focus has been. I haven't felt the need to seek out much more, but there's a lot of other good stuff out there.
So much more. Everything that came before is worthy of your full attention. And the two after are good too, but they peaked. They peaked with this one. And this song is the peak of the peak of the peak. It's just, I love it. And you know what, James? If you love something, you don't just love it. You love v it. You know what I'm saying? Save that for the things in life you love the most. The love v.
You've made your appreciation of this track clear, but why do you think this is the title track?
It's a perfect title. I mean, I think she saw this album and this time period having the baby as her last chance to fix what was broken in her relationship. And it was like a last roll of the dice. We either figure this out and we have heaven and we have bliss, or, we end up broke and getting kicked out by the bouncer and it's the end of the night.
For the uninitiated guitarist Robin Guthrie, vocalist Elizabeth Fraser, I think she joined the band in 1981. They got together as a couple somewhere after that. We get to 1989 and they have their child. They're recording this album. Robin Guthrie's doing a lot of cocaine. I think they were hopeful that having the baby would maybe straighten him out a little bit, but I don't think that worked out as they hoped.
Yeah, he just got deeper and deeper into it. He just slid all the way down the slope and he got Las Vegas, man. He could have had heaven. He kind of had it in the process of making the record. One of the things that I love so much about this album is that Simon and Robin took their drum machine skills to the next level. The way the drums are panned and how full the kit feels. You still are aware it's a drum machine, but it's so much more textural and rich than earlier albums where it's very primitive drum machines. It's almost like Young Marble Giants or something where it's just very plodding and punk. It's very nuanced drum sounds.
Yeah, I think in earlier albums they were using like 808s and CR78s.
And no fills. This album has really nice but tasteful fills.
Yeah. This album, according to some interview with Robin Guthrie somewhere, he was using an Akai MPC 60 MK1 and an EMU SP 1200. Neither of which mean anything to me, but yeah, the drums sound real good.
And that solo, the slide solo, not a typical guitar texture for him, but it's so perfect.
No, I think it's one of two solos on the whole record, and they're certainly not shredding, and they're not improvised. They're very deliberately crafted and economical.
And I love this great flangey fade out on it. It's dissolving, shimmering back into stardust.
I'll use this lull in the action for a little shameless self-promotion. If you want more musings on music, go to zogernd.home.blog.
So if we're listening on vinyl or on a cassette, we're already on side B. I Wear Your Ring.
It happened so quick. It just seemed like yesterday we were cherry cola funking together.
This title, it seems kind of heavy-handed. It's a reminder. I wear your ring. asshole, straighten up.
A lot of the album is very bluntly that. I
Yeah.
mean, she really had to spell it out for him because he was not getting it, and he still didn't get it.
So on the spectrum, and please understand, this is not a dig. This is not me saying I don't like it, but on the spectrum of how amazing every song on this album is, this is the lower end of that spectrum for me. This one does the least for me. However, in about a minute and a half, we'll hit a really awesome part that completely makes up for any other shortcomings the beginning part of the song has.
This is probably the bottom of the album for me too, but I still like it, and listening over the last week, I've appreciated it more. One of the things I really love is the way the synths on this album kind of sound like guitars sometimes, and the guitars sound like synths, and the way everything kind of merges. And this one sort of has that melding.
It's really hard for me to tell the difference between which is which, and I have theories in a few cases, but I might be totally wrong. I'll also point out this is the slowest song on what's a pretty slow album.
Did you tempo map it, J-Lo?
I tempo mapped it. Yeah, I did a little math. Basically, all of side A is right around 90, and now we're starting side B at 70 BPM, and we're about to speed back up again. But if you average out the whole album, the whole album is an average of 91.9 beats per minute, which is fairly sedate.
They were one of the primary architects of dream pop, and other bands were doing similar things, but at their best, nobody was doing it better than the Cocteau Twins at that time. And everybody that's done dream pop since then owes them a huge debt.
And here's the amazing part that brings it all back. What are some other examples of dream pop?
Any shoegaze is at least overlapping part of the way with dream pop, like My Bloody Valentine. Loveless would be like, one of the other greatest sort of shoegaze dream pop albums.
That was definitely the album that I think of as most similar. I didn't know if it was permissible to overlap dream pop and shoegaze in that way. Shoegaze gets its name from the fact that you're using all these pedals to make all these monstrous sounds, and you're always looking at your feet. I could be proven wrong. The video quality is not great, but the video of the Heaven or Las Vegas tour, it looks like none of the four guitarists on the stage are using any pedals at all, and I'm wondering if they just had their pedals somewhere off stage, or just had everything dialed in, and that's how they flew the whole show. I have a lot of questions about the live performance.
So I said that Heaven or Las Vegas or Frou Frou Foxes, either one of those is my favorite, and whichever one ends up being second, this is my third favorite song.
Okay, this is Volkspolitik, where they are getting a little racy. And they're using some German cuss words. You can look this one up in the glossary. I won't sully this family-friendly podcast repeating.
Sully, J-Lo, Sully.
It refers to part of the female anatomy.
It's more than a makeout record.
I guess so. Well, and this could also be read as Elizabeth putting Robin in his place. One of the interpretations I saw somewhere was, and I think one of the lyrics in the song is "It's my body." I'm making the decisions.
Yeah, she's pleading with him in this song. Will you? Oh, will you?
Mm-hmm.
And at other points, she's just saying, "It's me. Listen to me." Yeah, so much yearning in this one. She yearns a lot, but this is like one of the most yearning of the Cocteau Twins songs.
Yeah. Musically, I wonder if you hear this too. You've got this nice, bright, clean guitar. I hear a lot of Johnny Marr here.
Ooh, that's a cool comparison.
A little bit of this charming man.
I love how thrummy the bass is.
basically all the reviews that I found, this album is on every top 10 list ever. The only negative review of it that I found anywhere was this long autobiographical essay that was published in the New England Review 2014. And this is written by somebody who was really into early Cocteau Twins and basically anything else that 4AD was putting out. Let me get your reaction to this. Their music came to seem easy theatrics, manufactured atmosphere, willful obscurantism. The album mostly sounded like a collection of learned, empty gestures. That title suggests some self-awareness that even our spiritual ambitions were possibly just cheap glitz. It's pretty harsh.
Yeah, and I don't buy it for a second. I don't buy a word of it. Anytime a band breaks big, there's always going to be those dudes that are just calling their cred into question.
Yeah.
And I love this right here. Cascading Frasers.
And here we have the other solo, if you want to call it a solo.
And which is such a fantastic, it's got to be one of the simplest solos ever, but it's so glorious.
It's like the buzzsaw effect pedal.
Yep.
With a little bit of flange in it. And yeah,
it crosses briefly, special. It almost crosses over into like bagpipe realm. Which makes me wonder if part of this might be Ebo, which often achieves that bagpipe effect.
This is my entry point into Cocteau Twins, so I'm not the one to ask, but coming up with their previous work, is it valid? Is it possible to find more merit in what came before it? And this is kind of a selling out or a dilution of what came before? Just playing devil's advocate here.
Somebody could try to make that case, but I don't buy it. I mean, I will say that I think this is their best album, but I don't know that it's my personal favorite album. And I make that distinction with a couple different bands that I love, like R.E.M. Like, what I think is their best album isn't my favorite, necessarily. Okay. And I do love earlier ones maybe a little more, just because when I found them, they blew my mind in a way that I was totally unprepared for, and they shaped me. So I have more personal, connection. But this one is undeniably like the peak of their artistic achievement in terms of they're just firing on all cylinders, from the ground up. The beats are fuller, thicker, better. They're more accomplished musicians. She's got a confidence as a singer that she didn't have, and it's got thematic coherence and unity. It's like, yeah, it's all there.
I want to confront the lyrical content a little more directly.
You going to be true blue and real?
True blue and real. And you're the lyricist here, so I want to put you on the spot a little bit. We've talked about how a lot of what she's singing is fairly inscrutable. I think she's talked herself about how it comes from a place of not having great diction, being a little bit of a lazy vocalist, which is not to say she's not an amazing vocalist, but in terms of understandability, even she seems to think something is to be desired there. And in terms of the words she's actually singing and the meaning that she's trying to convey, how does it all come together for you as an appreciator of lyrics and words?
This particular track, or her approach in general?
Her approach in general.
She's a genius. What she does with words, it's like she gives you enough. In particular, in this album, she gives you quite a bit of direction, but the rest is wide open to interpretation. And you as a reader listener, get to participate in making meaning of it. I think I wouldn't call it lazy at all. I would just say that she's evocative and she resists pinning things down. And I love that it's very rare that you feel like a song has a definitive meaning with Cocteau Twins. It's very evocative. She suggests all these possibilities, and you get to decide which of those you want to go with or create something new.
That's cool. I really like your kind of baby talk interpretation that you brought up earlier. One of the things that I've been thinking about for those unfamiliar with the term, a mondegreen is a misheard lyric, and I feel like this whole album is kind of mondegreen city. Las Vegas is where you go to get the mondegreens. You can
For sure.
you can distort lyrics any way you want. None of the websites that purport to decipher lyrics for you, they don't agree. If you go to Lyrics Genius or Lyric Find, they're all
Don't
they're
do
all
it.
over the
Don't
place.
do it. Don't ruin it for yourself. She's just channeling the subconscious. She's like letting the cosmos flow through her. At her best, that's what she's doing. And that's what I don't like as much about the last two albums, is it got a little more explainy.
Yeah.
And there's enough here that she's saying what she wants to say, but she's leaving so much for you. She's very generous that way. She's like, take it where you want to go with it.
Interesting factoid that I picked up somewhere was when Cocteau Twins albums were released in Japan, the Japanese record labels insisted on having lyric sheets. So they had somebody sit down at a typewriter and just type up what they thought they heard.
I'd love to see that.
That became one of the official versions. But they've, here and there, various members have kind of confirmed scraps of lyrics, and you can find that at cocteautwins.com and various places.
Yeah, I mean, some cases she's making no attempt to hide it. In other times, it's slurring between a couple different things. And language is a tool that she's using in this very free associative way. And sometimes she's giving different emphasis on different times that she's singing a phrase, too. I feel like this one, Road, River, and Rail, one of the things that really struck me listening over the last few days was how much she kind of is doing similar things to Joni Mitchell in this one, with her voice and with the vibe of it, and even lyrically a little bit touches on Joni territory for me a little bit, which is something I never would have thought of for her, but it's actually an interesting point of comparison for their style of singing.
I kind of split the album into two types of songs, and this will be an example of one that's revolving around an arpeggio rather than the majority of them are just kind of strumming guitar chords, whereas there are a handful of ones that center around arpeggios. And the musical theory that I have for why Heaven or Las Vegas, the song, is the title track, and it's sort of the center of the album. It's the end of side one. It's both. We've got strumming and arpeggiating going on at the same time.
Cool.
Carrying that one step further, my favorite track there, 50/50 Clown, is the one that doesn't fit that mold. We're not strumming chords, we're not arpeggiating either. We're leaving all this space and syncopating beats and taking a whole other approach. I don't know if there's authoritative information on this, but I wonder if Simon wrote the music to that one. I know he wrote the music to Frou Frou Foxes, the very last track. It has a different feel to it than a lot of the other ones. I want to share one of my half-baked theories about this album with you. So the title is Heaven or Las Vegas. So I wonder if there's a more or less explicit gambling theme. I think we've got the second track, Pitch the Baby, which is an explicit gambling term. We've got Ice Blink Luck of the draw or whatever. 50/50 Clown, the odds, Heaven or Las Vegas itself. So if side A is Las Vegas, then does that make side B Heaven? I didn't have anywhere to go with it after that.
It's a cool theory. I feel like it's part of what makes it great is there's so many keys that you could try to use to unlock it. And that's certainly one of them. Recurring words and phrases is one of them. Animals are one of them. The album has tigers, wolves, and foxes. This song, man.
I'm thinking about the point where I usually get goosebumps and getting goosebumps in anticipation of that, but it's coming up shortly.
Oh, I've already got them. I love the way it builds. This is one of the ones that references most directly that eerie, haunted, spooky, old Cocteau Twins before the break, where the mood shifts.
At one point, I want to talk about Cocteau Twins playing live. They went on a tour with this album. They hadn't played out for 4 years before this album came out. I think they were writing with playing live more in mind when this was in progress. And they actually did take it out on the road for at least as far as setlist.fm can tell 63 dates across Europe and North America and South America. And this song, Frou Frou Foxes and Midsummer Fires, is one of 3 from the album that they didn't play this one or Futz a Politic or 50/50 Clown live at all on their tour.
Dude, that's the gold.
I think the reason why here is because it's so piano centric.
Right.
Are they gonna haul another piece of equipment out on stage? But I'm curious. Did you check out any of their live videos?
I haven't watched them in a while, but there've been periods where I've binged on those.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's one surviving video from this tour from London, November 1st, 1990. Picture quality and sound are not great, but some clever person got their hands on a soundboard mix from a show they did in Detroit. And because they're using pre-recorded drums, they're able to sync up the sound from one show to the video to the other. So it gives you a pretty good approximation of what it's like to be at the show.
Cool.
You know, everybody is standing completely stock still, but they've got all these swirling lights around them and fog machine. Most importantly, they've got 2 additional guitarists, because how are you going to recreate all of this with one guitar? We started this discussion with how this is a perfect album. So let's enumerate quickly all the ways that this is a perfect album, or what constitutes its perfection.
Okay, are you starting?
We've got a very distinct sound. You hear this, you're not mistaking it for anybody else, I don't think, which I think you could for some of their earlier albums. Like I was saying, Garland's certainly calls to mind The Cure for me. I feel like on Treasure, they were trying on a lot of different styles, and not all of them fit quite. But by this point, they had arrived. They kind of had grown into what they were destined to become. So that's one. Over to you for number 2.
I mean, I would just elaborate on what you said. I feel like all the elements of sound that they were exploring on the early albums, they perfected all of these different things that they were doing. That they learned how to play the studio. They learned how to use the drums to their full advantage, and they have dimension. They're spread across the stereo spectrum in a way that they weren't. And so they're painting in the studio with the sounds in a way that there's a level of mastery that they didn't have on earlier albums. And then all of that combined with just her confidence and the thematic unity that she brings to it, with different phrases that recur and different things that she's addressing directly. There's a maturity of the songwriting that is just really self-assured, and yet it still is half in the dream world and half in the waking world. So it's not like she's crossed over completely into telling you what the song is about, but it's much more direct and confident, but then it dips back into the dream world again. And the old tension is still there, but the mastery of playing that tension they've perfected that.
We would be remiss if we did not say just the sound of her voice is one of the elements of that perfection. Everything that she's able to do with it, her range, her tone, her phrasing, one of the most remarkable voices of rock music.
It's really eerie and goosebumpy what she can do. And she's kind of got control in a way, this album, that she didn't have before.
The disappointing thing about seeing them live is you've only got one Elizabeth Fraser.
Right.
Whereas on this record and all the other ones, she is double-tracked, triple-tracked sometimes. And that is such a big part of what makes them sound like what they sound like and what makes it so glorious.
Yeah, I think of this as one of the best examples of what I think of as the Cocteau triplets or the Cocteau quadruplets. Because when she's got the one, and then the high one, and all that's going all at once, I could just drown in this and I'd die happy. So glorious. It's like the best ending an album could ever have.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've covered a ton of ground, and I've had a blast talking to you about this, but I'm dying to hear this poem that you've written.
Okay, well, don't die for it, because it's like a rough draft written last night around my fire pit. I'll probably hate it and revise it completely tomorrow, but this is what I wrote last night. And when I say I wrote, I also borrow pretty liberally from Liz, or at least my interpretation of Liz in places. Cherry-colored lightning. Over rude river and rail, through burned lips, Love is calling all mothers' daughters, all her stoned and broken sons, losing mad chips at the blackjack table. Oh, will you? Will you? Liz sings cherry-colored harmonics on road, river, and rail, borrows tones from Joni. Through Paris breaks dawn, carries her bell through the desert. Frey's cherry-colored lightning starts midsummer fires that burn through September, burn this whole madhouse down.
Thanks again to my guest, Daniel Hales. You can find out more about his poetry and his music at danielhales.com. That's Hales. Thanks for listening.